SpongeBob.
It's 6 o'clock, and we're going to call the April 10th, 2023 Agricultural Advisory Board to order. If we could have just a moment of silence before we start the meeting tonight. Okay, if I could, I would like to ask our District 5 Rep, Mr. Charlie Whiten, to lead us in prayer, the invocation.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, as we come to you, we're so thankful, Lord, to be a part of agriculture in this county. May we represent, and may we put you first in all that we do. Lord, we have a special prayer tonight for the folks that are devastated by the tornadoes and all out west and up in Tennessee and across Kentucky. We just have a special prayer for them, Lord, that you'll touch them, comfort them as only you can. Heal, Lord. Lord, we thank you for each and every blessing of life. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen. And I would like to ask our District 4 Rep, Ms. Ashley Townsend, if she would lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on our agenda is the approval of the minutes, and I guess I need a motion to amend. We just have an incorrect date. The minutes are March 13th, and they would be the 2023 minutes that you have. If we could just have a motion to amend that part of the agenda, and then a motion to approve the
Make a
minutes.
motion.
Motion, second? Second. All in favor for the amendment? Aye. Okay. And now if I could have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted unless there are any corrections, deletions, or changes that need to be done.
Make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion carried. All right. The next on our agenda, and I think you all were emailed this, was the Agricultural Task Force final report. There were a couple of action item steps that were in there, and one in particular that I would like to, for the Ag Board to really look at and consider is the action step of the Oconee Agricultural Advisory Board will take the steps to create the framework and ordinance for a voluntary agricultural district in Oconee County. I know I had made notes of a couple of questions I had about that, but my thought process was, can you guys see the map over here to my left? the orange and the pink? Okay. That map represents all the properties in Oconee County that at the present time are receiving what is, and James, you can please correct me if I say it wrong,
Okay.
the agricultural rate for their property, meaning they have come to county and said, I'm a farmer, or I farm, I have 5 acres. I thought the minimum was 10, but I have been told that it's 10 acres of farmland, 5 acres of timber. So they're either classifying in some way and is being approved that they are ag. There are groups of those that are together. And we have talked about when we take our meeting, and I think we saw evidence of this, it's reflected in our minutes, when we came to your district, Charlie, that a lot of people wanted to do the volunteer zoning
Exactly.
of agriculture to protect their land.
Right.
I think this is a great place to start. I don't know if you want to call that low-hanging fruit, but you have these people already involved in some way with agriculture, and I think it would be a good education point to have the forms that say, this is how you do it. This is how you can, not only, and I think the reason I'm saying this, and James and Elise can correct me, a lot of those people think once they do that, they're already zoned. They don't need to do anything else. If you ask them, they'll say, well, I'm already zoned agriculture. I'm already ag exempt. And they are for their taxes,
Right.
but they're not, they're still in the control free, a lot of them, for their property rights and protections. And it's two separate things, and I think there is a missing education piece, which is why we submitted what we did to James in our budget as what was in the comp plan. Ashley pointed out so well that there should be someone that promotes agricultural liaison for agriculture. I think that is where that person, no matter what that can't have a personal agenda, got to be Switzerland, can educate people that yes, you've made a great first step, and yes, you do get a reduction in your taxes. However, you're not protected.
That's right.
So we need you to become protected, and this is how you protect yourself.
Now on your map, the
Mm-hmm.
yellow, orange, is that farmland also?
My understanding is it's the pink, is that correct?
So that's not our map, that is a map from the assessor's office,
Okay.
which is a tax
What-
purpose, so.
What's the orange, James? Do you,
I can walk over there
It's
and look at
50
it.
plus acres, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's based on the
So they're
size.
all
Size.
ag, it's just an
Mhm.
acre.
Acreage difference, right,
The pink is agricultural permits 50 plus acres.
right.
you got good eyes.
So, so that is a great point that you're asking there, Charlie, because if those large, and a lot of those in your area, James, can you put don't we have one where it's already zoned, that's one of your maps?
We have that same map, I didn't pull it up, so we've got the prime farmland you asked for. this
Right,
afternoon.
and that's
And
the
the
other
larger parcel.
education piece I think we need to educate folks on, is if they have prime and protected soils on their property, that's another reason to go ahead and protect that property. You have two reasons, one, your taxes, and two, your prime and protected soils.
This is the existing land use.
Okay. Now, Charlie, this is interesting. This is what a lot of those folks in your area were looking at, the big maps we had blowed up at the
Right.
meeting. So the green is your agricultural and forest lands, and you have a lot of that in your area. If you take that red line, that is 24, right?
76,
Should
123.
be
76, 123. So I'm looking at 24. I'm sorry, I'm coming down the black line. 24, and you got 11 over here and 59. So that area especially south there, which is in District 5, you have a lot of land that's already being used as farmland and zone. So that is where I think the task force was looking at those areas in there, if we could get the voluntary ag districts. And I think that's what the folks, and Charlie, you can please speak up, and anybody else that would like. That is where they were asking us for protection. Did I misunderstand that, or is that not what we kept being told over and
Well,
over?
the biggest thing, like you say, I think we need to educate people
Right,
and show them on the maps what they need to do. Like you say, we say, well, I'm tax exempt. Yeah, you are, but you're not really exempt, you just have a lower rate.
right. You have the lower rate for agricultural, but you're still in the zone of, free zone.
And then this is where the actual zoning, so this is actually zoned.
Okay, so this is where they were asking us, that was okay, so now I'm looking at the right map. Do you see the red lines that I was looking at, where it connects right there? That was the area, of a lot of those folks that were there, and that's what they were asking for. And I know that you're working on a lot, and I know there's some farmers, I know one that's got like almost 1,000 acres, and they're looking at coming. And you think about that, if those few larger plots come in there, you could have that voluntary ag district fairly in place
Exactly.
to go to planning and to council.
How much land is required for a voluntary ag district?
Well, that's what I think we're supposed to look at, and unless James has, there's nothing set.
There's nothing, doesn't exist at this point. So it would be a proposal from y'all or from the planning commission to council to create.
But
So-
it exists in other counties?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and everybody says this, the comp plan can change. It's just a plan, and it's a moving document, a working document. But if you look at the map that's on the wall in this council chamber of what the future land use looks like, it's exactly where we're talking about, and change this one up, that is the agricultural, they're looking at that, is basically, I want to say, Beaver Dam Creek, is that the right area, basin? I'm asking Charlie and Rex if I'm,
Yeah, that'd be Beaver Dam and Conroe's.
and Conroe's. So those are the areas that they have talked about protecting in that comp plan, and I think that's the areas, I mean, there's other areas, obviously, I don't live in that area, there are other areas that we would like to protect as well, but I think not to get off track, but Charlie, can you talk to this economic impact? And I think that is one of the reasons we need to protect this area. When you're talking about, and this is straight from the rep, that in this area we have at least $10 million a year annually coming back into our county. That's not the impact it has. That's just the gross figure that is this industry is producing is $10.2 million.
Well,
And
that's only one company.
One company. We have three, correct? So, I think if you look at that, just if you took that times 3, you're talking $30 million coming back into the county,
Exactly.
being spent in the county, and then you'd have to figure out the economic impact that has. But I think that is real farmers, real numbers, and that's the reason we're looking at that area. And I think that is one of the things that we probably need, one of the documents that we would need to have to back up are what we're saying, and the reason it's important.
And like you say, that $10 million, this one integrator,
Right.
and it's going out the tractor dealers, car dealers, gas stations,
Yeah, well, yeah.
banks, insurance companies.
Yeah, he listed that on there, that he says he knows that it's all being spent because all of the farmers are telling him they're broke. That it's going to, what you just said, utility companies, tractor dealers, car dealers, gas stations, banks, et cetera. So,
You know, most of the poultry operations are on natural gas, so,
right,
you know, it's a big kick for them and Blue Ridge.
right,
And I'd like to bring up one point also, a few years back, the poultry industry got together and, did a deal where they would take so much from your settlement and clear the right of way. You know, and everybody's getting, I know a lot of people don't up in this area, but where there's a lot of chicken farms,
right.
the right of ways have been cleaned up for the power lines. And during the windy weather like we've been having, a lot of folks have got to have it also, you know,
Right.
rural people.
I wonder if those, so you would know those, you guys would know those, because you guys deal with it on a monthly, weekly basis. If we had some of those pointers to go into the presentation, to say this is why we feel it's important to create this volunteer ag district. I guess my question is, this is an action step. The first thing is, we would need a motion for us to champion this cause for the Ag Advisory Board. Is this, I mean, we heard from District 5, I don't think District 3 is going to tell us much difference. Do you, Rex? So, do you want to start, so we're not wasting time, do you want to start maybe with this one action item? I don't want to overload our plates, but this one action item, and educating the public on the difference between taxed agricultural and zoned agricultural.
Well, like I said, you know, a lot of homeowners are getting reaping the benefits of the broiler houses.
Right,
One thing, clearing the right of ways, another thing I mentioned earlier, natural gas.
right,
Wouldn't have natural gas down that way if it wasn't going to
to a business,
a business or a broiler
Right.
operation.
exactly,
We're the one that petitioned them to get it, you know.
right. I think Mr. Powell brought a lot of that to our attention when we were there, and he was very supportive of what you know, of you guys trying to find some, which that is, if we look at that current land use map, that is one of the things that's there, is we have that one spot for industrial, the pink, down there in the corner. It was brought up also from your folks that they would like to see us have a business down there for ag. So I know you guys have been working on that, and I think this impact right here, or these raw numbers, are a good start for that as well. So I guess the question I go back to is, do we want to continue working? This is a great start, Charlie, what you've got here from your district. I think it's a great start to continue to work for something down there. Not let this get put on the back burner. Keep working toward ag industry in the lower end of the county, but also start working toward an action item to protect that area.
Right.
And if that is something, y'all can discuss it, we want to take up, then we would need a motion. And then, James, could you get us, I know there's some in there, some examples and your thought process on what
Sure.
could be stomached, I guess, what we could,
Well,
you know,
I can't
what,
determine what could be stomach, but I can give you some examples from other communities that are doing something similar.
and we can
Yes.
look at it just and kind of debate it out to see what would be what. So those two things, I guess, is where we're at, if y'all want to discuss it, and we can kind of go from there.
Well, I think when we look at the economic impact of agriculture in Oconee County, we need to really look at all realms of agriculture. You know, the
Right.
beef industry, I know we used to have a lot of dairies, but I think maybe one now, I don't know, but, all of the agriculture, the row crops, that's a chunk of change there, coming into this county.
I had one of your farmers, you mentioned to me the fact that we don't think of it as part of ag, but it really is. And that is our forestry.
Exactly.
And the fact that we're losing one of those producers, and it's going to impact us here, that processors in North Carolina, but I think that we may need to also look at what we have there and how we need to protect that as part of our ag as well. So I think that you make a valid point there. We need to look at all aspects of it. So I'll put it back to you guys if you want to discuss what a voluntary agricultural district would be, and if you want to start working toward that and continue working on what District 5 asks us for, and that's industry to support ag in the lower end of the county. So,
I'd like to finish up, and get the rest of the integrators in the county and get their input and, economic impact from them, and then I'll get the grain.
okay,
If somebody can get the cattle's, equine,
all right,
and all that, we'll have a lot to present,
okay.
then.
So are you going to, so we're talking about what District 5 told us they wanted, and that was industry to support ag in the lower end of the county, and he's putting together the figures for economic development.
Yeah.
And he said he would work on the poultry.
So it sounds like we're moving forward with this.
Yes.
I guess I'll make the motion
Okay.
if anyone else.
I wanted to ask really quick, have you looked at these other voluntary ag districts and what exactly
We
How
looked
they
at it
function?
At one, when we were discussing it as part of that task force report, but we haven't done anything in depth to kind of give you nuts and bolts.
is it just generally doing a broad sweep zoning
It
in
is not.
ag? What
No,
is a district, how is that different from zoning?
It would be more similar to kind of an opt-in as opposed to being top-down zoned where you are, like this is what it is, you are that now. It is something you can opt into that gives some protections from the county that are not available without it.
I'll have to look into it more, just to understand
Yeah.
how it's different from just zoning your land ag versus a district.
And what does that process look like? Like the landowners coming to planning commission?
I think what it would, the way I envision it, and James can correct me if I'm wrong, we would need them to zone agricultural and then put those districts together, because it says that we're looking for agricultural preservation district. So they would already be pretty much zoned is the way I see it. They would have chosen to do that, and then everything, and what you may have is you may have, like I'm sitting here looking at this right here, and there's some that are like it says residential, and it's very, very small, and it may be 5 acres, and they've not opted in. I think you would go to them and ask them at that point. Look, everybody around you's ag. I understand you may have thought that you had to have 50 acres. We understand you don't. You have 10. Because if you look down there, you don't have anything that's not somewhere getting the, there's nothing down there that's not getting the exemption. So the smaller parcels are probably like, well, I only have 40 acres, so I can't zone myself. And they don't realize that they could because everybody around them is. And I think that's an education piece. So then they would become ag, and then that council would say, these people have opted in, we need to put an extra protection. So if developers come, if people come, they can help preserve that properties, if that's what the landowner chooses.
Right.
So, did I explain that?
So the bottom line is it's kind of up to y'all to shape.
Okay,
It can be whatever you think it should be.
okay.
And to go along with that, I think it'd be great if the land doesn't have to be contiguous. That's what you're saying, right? Parcels that people get together and, I think if a person owns land over here and owns land over here and he wants it to be a voluntary ag district, why couldn't it be? I know the rule says contiguous, but
I think that's a state law. We could, you know what, Rex, we could definitely check to see, but I think we're gonna be I could be wrong. Let's check and see. But in my mind, I envision we're gonna be bound to the same restraints as when they zoned. But we can always check and see, and I understand what you're saying, and that, you know, it probably would make it a lot easier, but that's where I think you're gonna run into the issue, and James, you can correct me, of that would be considered spot zoning.
That's
even
why this wouldn't be a zoning.
It would not be a zoning, okay.
So any size could opt in,
Potentially.
potentially based on what we
Okay,
say.
so then, yes, maybe possibly we could, because we're not zoning, is what James is saying. But I
You can
think,
be zoned and then also opt in.
Yes.
Or you cannot opt in and still be zoned.
Mhm.
They don't.
I think what this is asking for with these, if I understand it correctly, these voluntary ag districts, is that extra code of
Extra
protection.
protection. On top of zoning.
Yes, yes.
You know, as we look at that map, and the people that are already getting tax relief, some from their land, is there a way that we could, when we go to talk to these people, and you mentioned zoning sometimes, and they take it the wrong way?
Exactly,
Yeah, y'all know what I'm saying.
right.
If we could call it something else.
Well, they can opt in to be an ag district without zoning their land ag. I think that's the difference between the ag district, and so you don't even have to say zoning, you can just say, you can opt in and you'll be protected in this way.
And are there any, could we make a handout or something? We could show people what, you know, and they're gonna ask, what's in it for me, or what do I need to do? Or what's my restrictions?
Right.
You know, and that way we could go over it with them and say, here, this is what it is.
I think
And-
bullet pointing the, like with ag, where it says, right now, the way it reads, and James, help me if I'm wrong, it says 1 house per acre. It says, these are the things, once you opt into this, and I think bullet point, 1 house per acre. I can't think of, that one just stands out, because everybody keeps talking about, I want to give my child a house on the farm, somewhere to build their house. There's other things, but if you just bullet point them, whatever they are, I think if you had that really short and sweet,
Just a handout.
it would make it more self-explanatory. I think where a lot of people get hung up is on the word zoning. I think protection, preservation, I think those are the things that are, you know, that was what the planning commission said, you know, I hear what you're saying, but are we educating them? Well, James done a real good job with his presentation. He had people come up to him after that, and I think some of those were even not District 5, they may have been District 4, but they were interested enough to come to the meeting, because we took it to them, and they wanted to know more. So I think maybe language-wise, James, could you help us with that a little bit, or at least just the bullet points on each zoning classification, or do we already have it? I don't want to reinvent the
So it's
wheel.
already in the code of ordinances, and then there's a land use matrix of
Right,
every zoning district that exists, and then kind of conditional uses, so what you can and can't do.
we can just kind of shrink it down, and we can look at, does someone want to look at that and maybe,
I can look at the zoning.
And maybe-
We're just looking at the zoning, that's what
mainly
we're
for
focusing on right now.
for ag, and then, but I think the motion is, do we want to move, that Ashley was trying to make, I'll let you make your motion, was on moving forward with the voluntary
Ag district.
ag district matrix. We would have to put it together, the framework. I think that, I'll let her state her motion, but I think that's where she was going.
I make a motion that we move forward with the voluntary ag district.
I say,
Second it, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I feel like if we sit on this long, we're losing property every day.
Right, so that's why, that's,
Investment groups are coming in and, I mean, I rent a lot of land and, a lot of it's owned by investment groups
right.
already. I mean, we're talking big tracts of land. I feel like it's something we don't need to sit on. We need to get on with it and go if we're gonna do this.
Okay. So our next meeting, I guess, so we'll try to put some timeline since we've agreed to do this. I guess our next meeting will be the open discussion again and not really anything but approving the minutes. But possibly, in the meantime, if we send you stuff, James, that we're working on framework-wise and definition-wise, can you send it out for us and we can kind of continue to work on this,
Yep.
but still hold our meeting in District 3 for what their needs are? Because I don't want to get sidetracked on what the needs of the communities are.
Is this a line item that we would want to include in the agenda for that meeting? A voluntary ag district? Or we want to leave it more simplified?
Well, here's the thing I don't want to do, and this is me personally, and y'all can correct me, jump in at any point. When we went to 5, we approved the minutes and we opened it up for discussion, and we were there to listen to them. And then this meeting was for us to come back and work on the things they told us.
Exactly.
So I guess my thing is, I don't want to take away from those folks, because we didn't take away from them.
What I meant was, do we want to say this is something that was brought to our attention? What do you think is more of the question?
We could bring that up and still have the same survey and have that as a question and just have a definition of what we're looking at.
It might help us form language where people might be confused about what it means.
Right.
If we hear what their concerns would be.
Maybe hit it on the front end instead of after we've put a lot of work into it. That makes
It's
sense.
typically applicable to other zones. and
Right,
other
it is.
Regions.
I just don't want to take away from their meeting. But if that's the only line item we have, then I don't see an issue with that. And if it's, because we did our goals and everything before, but if we just kind of do the same thing and then here we are, this is what we've been charged with, this is what we're looking at, and then open it up, then they can tell us they can voice their concerns if they have them.
What other information do you feel like we need, Kim? For agricultural impact?
I think, okay, so let me get on one thing. So we're gonna move forward with the voluntary districts, and we're gonna move forward with the language. Then we need to go back to what was brought up at your meeting, which is industry and economic impact of agricultural. So I guess we officially need to make that our second item. So if you want to make a motion that we work on that with economic impact, then we can start assigning other areas. Does that make sense?
I'll make it a motion.
Okay, so you're making it a motion that we work toward the economic impact of agricultural to bring an industry to District 5 if possible, but to the county overall.
That's right.
Have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we have one integrator, one poultry integrator. What do y'all feel are the other important things? I know Charlie said there's at least 2 more, and he would work on getting those integrator numbers. He mentioned cattle. Ashley, I know you guys, in working with the Food Council, have mentioned the need for processors for other animals, not poultry, but for cattle and all of that. Do you want to work on those numbers, or
We can do that.
is that something that you think that's where we need to go with our cattle and those numbers for integrators and what we would need? Okay.
Yeah, I think so, and we, as we look toward row crops, poultry, cattle, even goats. There's a lot of goats being raised.
There
you
are,
know,
and I think that's what Ashley was saying, small animal.
and stuff like
All we
that.
have to do is look at the 2017 census.
Do you want to pull those numbers for the row
I
crops?
would love to, and I would love for us to print up about 100 of those two-sided flyers that we did before. And I had some printed myself for the fair. And the farm board should still have some of those left, I hope. But I would like for us to print some flyers with just that information we're talking about.
Okay,
And it covers a lot.
right.
Yeah, I'll be glad to help pull
That's the
together.
most recent, 2017?
And, yeah,
And
What date was that, Rick?
it was 2017, I think.
And you look at too, you know, grain has doubled since that time in price, so
Yeah.
that's more
I
impact.
was thinking that
Yeah, we'll
maybe
have to update it.
there might be a 2021, maybe if we could contact USDA. I think they should have, and I'll make myself a note. I'll try to make that call.
I'll look too. I know that sounds like a long time ago, but it took
Right.
us 2 years before they released it, so.
Right, they
either
don't release.
2017 or
right away.
2019. 2019 may have been released in 21.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking that there's been one more, maybe we can find out. Also, the other thing, and I just thought of that, so in the minutes, it reflected what your representative stated, and our agricultural commissioner stated that he was making a big announcement that agricultural was the #1 industry in South Carolina. So I think if we could get in touch with that office, with Mr. Weathers' office, and find out that information, that would be, I would like to see where Oconee is on that, because that should give us the printout for all of the above. But he made that big announcement, so I think that is important as well. And then forestry, I guess we need those numbers as well. Tessa, we've already given you a lot, so.
I can do forestry. I was in touch with some of them on the last time, some of the professors at Clemson to do the
Okay.
studies, and they did
So you
Oconee
work
County
with them?
specifically.
Okay.
And I'll be glad to.
To get that together. That's great, Rex, thank you. So then that would cover the industry as a whole, not just one sector of it, to keep us moving forward. And
Say, I
then,
think we can go through the Farm Service Agency and get most of that data.
that's what I was
Okay.
thinking. I said USDA, but I should have said Farm Service, but yes.
I'll be glad to do that also.
Okay, all right, that sounds great. Also, and then, once we kind of get all that together, we'll have the meeting in May for District 3. So Rex, do you want us to give us an update and the address, and then James can start advertising?
Yes, we'd love to print up some flyers for that, Mr. James. It's going to be in May we say 13th, the second Monday. 6 o'clock, Farm Center, Sanford Boulevard. Don't know the numerical address, but everybody knows where the Farm Center is. The go-ahead I got was, it's an open area. If it's raining, you're under a tarp, so I guess that means we can use it. So we'll have to arrange chairs and tables, I guess. I'll coordinate that. but
Are we not the 8th? Or are we the,
I didn't open
I
the
thought it
calendar.
was-
It's the second Monday.
It's gonna be the 8th.
the 8th?
Hey,
May 8th? Okay.
Sorry,
No, it's fine. So we have the right date that we
I
advertise.
do well to remember second Monday.
You're good, okay. All
So,
right.
yeah, I'll coordinate with them and all that and the setup and all.
Okay. All right. So the next thing on our agenda is the report to Planning Commission. So last Monday, Rex attended the Planning Commission meeting, and we had a fairly lengthy conversation about what our board does. And so they have asked us to come back and give them kind of a full report. So their meeting is on is it the 18th? Is it the
Yep.
Thursday? Okay.
No, it's not Thursday. It
It's the
should be,
16th then, or the 15th?
15th.
The 15th. So the week after our meeting at the Farm Center for District 3, the Planning Commission will meet here on the 15th. And I've asked James to advertise that meeting as one of our meetings as well, so that we do not have any issues with having a quorum here in case they want to ask questions. For that meeting, the two things that we've talked about, volunteer ag districts, which includes educating the public on what agricultural zoning is, the difference in tax exempt ag and agricultural. And then what we're looking to do with the task force report to try to create a voluntary ag district. Those are kind of our focus. And then, and I told Charlie this in talking to him, I don't think you can ever champion economic impact numbers or just raw numbers like Mr. Martin gave us from Fieldale, that there's $10 million a year coming back into this county from just him. Which in theory, if you think about it, the other two integrators, we're at 30 million, which then we would need to do the impact on $30 million to the county. Not to mention any of the other industry that we have with cattle, which actually I think I've been told we're sitting number 4. Anderson's number 1, so I would think we would be fairly high. I know we've been 2 and 3 before, but I think in recent times, last year, I think we were 4, is what someone had told me. So those numbers I think are important. So I think those numbers to planning would be a great part of our presentation. Now, if you guys think we need to be different, y'all can tell me, but I think as far as that and putting together a PowerPoint, I think that's pretty impactful.
We've got a pretty good PowerPoint already. We just need to shorten it and put numbers on it.
So,
I'm glad to share that with you.
but I had kind of started that last week, and then I thought, that's not going to really work because they don't really know me, and here I come in with this thing. So I just kind of stopped, and we just talked. But I think those were the things they were asking for. Y'all can correct me, kind of what our goal and mission was and what we were focused on. But I think economic impact is important, and I think, sharing where we are on ag is important too, and educating the public. So,
We want to put those numbers in presentation form, which we already have. Just need to update it
update it. Yeah.
and then take it.
We have several PowerPoints, I think, that different ones of us have done for things. But
Okay.
I think what I'm coming to you guys for, and I'll be happy to present, but is that direction of let's stay focused on the numbers and how much ag does impact our county. Now, one thing, actually, that hasn't been on there and was not on the 2017 study, and I think it has grown immensely since then, is ag tourism.
Right.
And I think that probably should be one of our focuses as far as what we tell planning. Because, everybody wants, with tourism, heads in beds, and then they want them to go home. I don't think they realize how much ag tourism can bring. Like when the fair comes and you bring in people, I know Lisa had the shooters, the mounted shooting folks, and then you had part of like the barrel racers, part of the rodeo, part of the roping, you look at all of those people coming into our county, filling up with gas and all that. That's a huge impact to our counties. I think we probably should add a category, and that should be agritourism. That's my personal opinion. You guys can tell me if you think that's a
I think
positive.
it's great.
and what you guys do. I know that that's a big part of it, and that's ag tourism. So if you have those numbers and want to share, we can kind of email out and back different PowerPoints and put
Okay.
something together.
Okay.
Anything else that you guys think we need to? I know we've covered a lot in 45 minutes, but need to go into this presentation. I will put it this way, this will be a good start to our presentation. We're going to have the meeting in May prior to, and we can kind of finalize some of that at that meeting. But in the meantime, as we're working on it, if anybody has ideas, I'm open. It's not a Kim deal, it's everybody, because agriculture impacts everybody, so. If we're good with that, we have a guest tonight, Miss Emily Hitchcock.
For those of you who don't know me, I am Emily Hitchcock and I'm from Mountain Rest. But before I say what I prepared, I want to say I was so glad to hear y'all looking at the voluntary ag districts and looking forward, look at getting something. Anyway, I was so excited to hear your discussion today. But I'm speaking to you today not as a member of the task force, but as a former chair of the Oconee County Conservation Bank. There are a lot of recommendations in the task force report, and I just want to draw your attention to those that relate to the OCCB or the bank. The OCCB grants are used as matching local funds so that eligible recipients can obtain other grants to fund the acquisition of conservation easements on eligible properties. The average cost to the bank is $321 per acre. Now that is a bargain, folks. That is what we in this county are spending to preserve those properties. The bank usually provides, and this is how we get to this, about 10% of the total cost of the conservation easement. So that gives you an idea of what's coming in. In approximately 5 years, the OCCB spent almost $350,000 funding 11 eligible projects totaling over 11,000 acres. 6 of those grants were for the placement of conservation easements on farms. So the majority of them, over the majority of them, were for farmland. To date, the bank's funding has come from Duke Power, a grant that I believe was $618,000. Private cash donations, a little under $8,000. Interest on invested funds, which is a little under $12,000. And then in-kind donations from property owners, i.e. a bargain basement sale. Not all property owners can donate a portion of the value of the conservation easement. Today, the bank has less than $300,000 remaining. The board has not received, at least when I went off the board in January, it had not received any applications in 2.5 to 3 years. This is primarily due to the shutdown, the booming housing market, the scarcity of appraisers and surveyors and staff for our eligible applicants. The persons who actually apply for the grants, the eligible applicants, are the folks who are going to hold the conservation easement. So it could be soil and water, and it usually is for farmland, but occasionally for farmland, we'll have another one. Upstate Forever, Natural Land Trust, there's one other that we have granted that while I was on the board, a conservation easement, but I can't remember who it was. However, I have been speaking to those eligible recipients and their staff, and they tell me that they do have a backlog, that people have been coming to them saying, I want to put a conservation easement on my property. And now they're trying to find surveyors, they're trying to find the money to pay the surveyors and the appraisers, because of course that money has to be paid up front. Once those start hitting the pipeline for the board, based on past applications, the numbers, it will take less than 3 years for the bank to exhaust its funds. It's important to note that there is an increasing interest in conservation easements as a private tool for conserving land. I've heard several people, including council members, postulate that conservation easements in voluntary agricultural districts are the best way to protect farmland. If that is going to be the practice in this county and the current approach for the foreseeable future, then 2 of the task force recommendations need to be addressed. The first is the county needs to fund the 2 positions recommended by the task force. Of course, I heard y'all discuss one of them today. That's the education position that would educate citizens about food production, the importance of local farms, voluntary agricultural districts, as well as assisting the Soil and Water Conservation District in processing those applications that they have pending. Well, that's the second position, I believe, would be at Soil and Water. See, y'all know this a lot better than I do. The OCCB needs substantial funding. That's why I'm here. Y'all know the background. Preferably of a permanent nature, but if it's not, we need to start working now on getting an influx of money, or we're going to be dead in the water soon. It's just some of the, okay. Conservation, thank you. Conservation easements are a useful tool, but there must be a financial commitment from the local entities. As I mentioned, it is not a cheap process, and most property owners cannot do it themselves. Well, I think that's it. So, I made my minute. If y'all have any questions, of course, I'll answer them, but thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Miss Emily, when I was researching the Conservation Bank Board, I was pretty surprised to find out there's no funding from any entity other than volunteers and groups, and it was a low number. It was 200,000 at the time I was looking, but that won't go far.
Now, I think right now, because I checked the report that was done at the meeting last week, and I think it was like 250-something thousand, or maybe it was 240-something. Anyway, it's not much money.
So when I discovered that, I've been promoting the whatever ways we can fund the Conservation Board.
Good.
Impact fees, tax, percentage of a tax or whatever. There's money, I'm sure money there.
Yeah.
If we can convince people to.
And the challenge, and I guess that's really what I was asking y'all to do, is put this as a priority, so that y'all are looking at it and making a recommendation to the county council, this is what we think you need to do. Some of those, like A-tax, I don't think you could use for the OCCB.
My question is, first of all, thank you for coming and thank you for the update. OCCB, did you guys try to go to council yearly for like monies for that, or how did that?
No, currently, the ordinance says that
I guess
council cannot give us tax dollars.
Okay,
And so there has been no money and no request for non-tax dollars.
okay.
And that is part of where we were starting to discuss it, but kind of deferred to the task force once that got.
I guess my other question is, you mentioned Duke Power, and it was a one-time grant. I know they have several endowments and several different grants for different things. Was it ever explored to look to them for a continuous grant stream?
Yes, we have discussed that quite a bit in our meetings. The Duke Power grant that we got was actually part of a settlement of a potential litigation as part of a relicensing.
Okay.
So it was a one-time thing. The endowments that they have we are not eligible for.
Okay,
So if we were going to get more Duke Power money, it would be because there was another licensing issue.
okay.
And of course, there are folks out there keeping their eye on that.
So
But
then-
those,
So then my next question is, with the way that the current ordinance is written,
Mhm.
has the OCCB, has the bank went back and requested for there to be a review of that ordinance so that there can be more money, either through, i.e. fundraising, through some type of Avalon tax dollars? Has that been it? I guess I'm asking these questions since you were there and kind of know the history, because if we can sit up here and talk about it, but if we don't know the history, then we're gonna repeat some of the same
Yeah.
things, and if we're gonna hit the same brick wall every time, we're all kind of spinning our wheels.
absolutely. In terms of amending the ordinance, we have amended it several times since the original ordinance, but never related to that particular item, the language about no tax dollars.
Okay?
That has been, kind of considered by the predecessors to me on the board as being untouchable.
Okay.
Some of the, one of the proposals was perhaps the Green Space Act in the task force report. That, of course, would be taxes, because it doesn't specify ad valorem taxes, it says taxes.
Okay.
So that would require an amendment to the ordinance. The county can, as we all know, they can amend it. The issue is going to be presenting something, but no, that has not been run. We have discussed, or they have discussed, fundraising, and even discussed possibly setting up a fundraiser to set up an endowment. It's we spent a lot of time on that, and where we are now is that they're not going to be doing one. And I'm not going to bore you with all of, but
Like I
if that
said-
decision was made. I mean, we do fundraising in terms of we go out, we talk to people, we ask them to donate, but not a real campaign.
Got you. So the reason I ask is because I know it's in the task force report. And if we have that come up, then it's good to already have the information and the other board members hear it as well. Also, you know, as far as agriculture is concerned, one of the reasons I chose the voluntary ag district is because that's in our lane, and so I know that that is in our report. But then, you know, we have to kind of stay in our lane too, to
Yeah.
make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing for farming. But I do think preserving farmland and any way we can help the Conservation Bank, it makes sense, the two go together, but.
And it might be Andy Smith is the current chair.
Okay.
And so you might want to get with Andy about, because as I understand the report, council sent it to y'all.
Yeah.
Which is the reason I'm here saying, hey. But I'm sure Andy would work with you, and, well, he works with everyone. I mean,
Right.
he's so great. But, yeah, get in touch with Andy and, then, so that you can have a consolidated, or whatever the word is.
Right, we just don't want to get out of, you know,
Yeah, everybody wants to be on the same page.
yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. And if they're working on something, I would hate to do something that hindered.
Yeah.
And so that's why we've tried to, you know, concise where we focus. But yes, preserving land is important,
Yeah.
so,
I just want to make sure that piece doesn't get lost,
yes, ma'am.
and, which is the reason I'm here,
Well,
because I'm
thank you.
passionate about it, as you know.
Yes, ma'am.
It's definitely been on my radar for several months, and I agree with Mr. Charlie. We're getting into almost a point of no return, and I'm feeling some real urgency because of what's going on.
Yes, yes. And I was excited to see that our numbers were, that we had given out so many, what a percentage of farm grants, but we just need to beat the bushes and get people applying, which is the reason that position the education position is so important.
And then, and that was one reason we're focusing on that, is
Yeah,
we need,
mhm.
people need to understand the difference.
Yeah.
And education is the only way that's gonna happen.
Well, thank you.
For coming. All right, I told everybody I would hold us to an hour. We got about 2 minutes, so, if nobody else has anything else, and we're squared away for
I got
the May 8th.
One quick thing. There's a land protection meeting tomorrow night. It slipped up on me, and I didn't know there was an RSVP for the meal, but I'm sure we can still attend. It's at 5:30 tomorrow. The gathering, 6 o'clock, is a presentation by Opus Trust, National Natural Land Trust, and Upstate Forever, with time for discussion to follow. And it said the RSVP time's already gone, but I can give you the contact of the people and maybe, I'm sure go and not eat if they run out, if they're not planning enough food, but I'll send you all the contact for that, so you can RSVP.
Where's it at?
Will you send it to?
I think it's
in Walhalla.
in Walhalla, Lee Farm Road, Walhalla, 5:30 to 7.
Will you send
Send
it
it to
to James so that he can send it out, so that we don't break any rules? But thank you for
Sure.
that. So, all right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? We're adjourned.